There was a man who sat on the same corner every morning. A flattened cardboard box, a paper cup, an old army green jacket. I passed him every single day, head down, pace quick, never looking. But my 9-year-old son Marcus was different. One Monday morning, he stopped, reached into his pocket, and held out a crumpled $1 bill.
Here, you can have this.
No explanation, no hesitation, just that. 3 days later, that man showed up at Marcus's school. I met him in the hallway outside the principal's office. And something was off. Beneath his worn jacket sleeve, I caught a glimpse of a heavy, expensive watch. His shoes, though dusty, were the kind worn by attorneys and executives. He rose from the chair, looked at me steadily, and said,
"Your son gave me something a lot bigger than $1, ma'am."
I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. Because this man was not who I had assumed he was. Not even close. The principal offered us a small conference room. It was a quiet space. Through the window, I could hear children playing in the schoolyard. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead. I sat down across from him with my arms folded, not yet willing to let my guard fully down. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set something on the table between us. A business card. I picked it up and read it. Daniel J. Hargrove, CEO, Hargrove Capital Development Group. I set the card back down and looked at him. I didn't have words. Hargrove Capital. Anyone who had spent any time paying attention to Chicago's skyline knew that name. 3 landmark buildings in the downtown corridor. One of the largest private real estate development firms in Illinois. A company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And this man had been sitting on a cardboard box on 31st Street. He began to speak quietly. His voice was low and measured, like someone who had rehearsed this, but was still finding it hard to say out loud. His wife had passed away 6 months earlier. 23 years together. Cancer. From diagnosis to the end, it had taken 11 months. He had a company, employees, obligations. But when she was gone, none of it felt like it meant anything anymore. He would sit in his office on the 42nd floor, look out at the city she had loved, and feel nothing. One morning, he got up, took off his suit, and went to the back of his closet. He pulled out an old army green jacket, the one he had been wearing the first time his wife ever saw him, decades ago. And he walked outside. He didn't know where he was going. He ended up on the corner of 31st and Wallace. He told himself it would be just one day. One day to disappear. But one day became 2, and 2 became a week. His assistant told the office he was traveling. The board was told he was dealing with a personal matter. Nobody knew that their CEO was sitting on a flattened piece of cardboard. Watching strangers walk past, I found myself uncrossing my arms. Daniel said that on that corner, he saw something he hadn't expected. He saw how people moved past him. The way they adjusted their path just slightly. The way their eyes slid past his face as if he simply weren't there. He had been a powerful man. His entire adult life, a man people stood up for when he entered a room. And suddenly he was invisible. Not just ignored, erased. He said it was lonelier than grief. And then Marcus stopped. No fear, no pity, no calculation. Just a small boy who looked at him directly and held out a crumpled dollar bill. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. As if Daniel were simply a person. Nothing more, nothing less. Daniel said it was the first time he had cried since his wife's funeral. Not because of the dollar, but because of what it meant to be seen again. Truly seen, by someone who had no reason to see him. I turned toward the window. Out in the schoolyard, I could see Marcus running with his friends. Laughing at something. Completely unaware of the conversation happening 30 feet away. Completely unaware of what that one small moment on a Monday morning had set in motion. I walked home alone that afternoon. Marcus had gone back to class. And I needed to walk. I needed the cold air and the sound of my own footsteps. When I reached the corner of 31st and Wallace, I stopped. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the empty patch of sidewalk. The place where the cardboard box had been. The place where the paper cup had sat. The place where, every single morning, I had dropped my eyes and quickened my pace. And I let myself admit something I had been avoiding. It didn't matter who he was. It had never mattered. I had looked away from a human being on that corner every morning for months. Not because I was afraid, but because looking felt like an obligation I wasn't ready for. Marcus hadn't felt that weight. Marcus had just looked. 2 weeks after that meeting, an envelope arrived at our apartment. It was thick and cream-colored. The return address was the legal department of Hargrove, Capital Development Group. My hands were unsteady as I opened it. Inside were several pages of formal documents, and at the front, a single handwritten letter on plain white paper. The letter was brief. When Marcus was ready to attend college, any program, any state, a trust had been established in his name to cover the full cost of his education. Tuition, housing, books. Everything. No strings, no conditions, with one exception. Marcus himself would need to come and accept it in person. When he turned 18, old enough to understand, old enough to choose, I sat down on the kitchen floor and wept. I'm not sure how long I sat there. I wasn't crying from gratitude. Exactly, though I was grateful beyond anything I could put into words. I think I was crying because I had been holding so much for so long. Quietly, without letting anyone see. 2 jobs, 6 blocks, a son to raise, a future to hold together with my bare hands. And here, suddenly, was someone saying I see you too. Marcus came and sat beside me. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just took my hand. 9 years old, and still the wisest person in the room. I posted this story on our neighborhood's community app a few weeks later. I didn't have a grand reason. I just felt like it needed to exist somewhere outside of my own chest. By the next morning, there were over 300 comments. Many people expressed shock at the twist. A CEO living as a homeless man, moved to tears by a child's dollar. But the comments that stayed with me weren't about the money or the surprise. The ones I kept returning to were simpler than that. One person wrote that it wouldn't have mattered if Daniel were truly homeless. Marcus didn't know. Marcus didn't care. The beauty of what he did had nothing to do with who was on the receiving end. It was entirely about who Marcus already was. Another person said they had read the story to their elementary school daughter at bedtime. The girl listened quietly, and then said she thought she could do something kind for someone. On the way to school tomorrow. Just something small. Someone else wrote, "We have been walking with our heads down for too long. Looking at the pavement, forgetting to notice who is beside us." I took a screenshot of that one. I still have it. Marcus is 10 years old now. He doesn't know about the letter. I haven't told him yet. I'm saving it for when he's 18, old enough to read it himself, to understand it fully. And to walk through that door on his own terms. The way Daniel intended. Daniel returned to Hargrove Capital. The board asked no questions. His team simply welcomed him back. He still goes to work every morning in a suit. Takes the elevator to the 42nd floor, and runs a company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But sometimes, I'm told, he takes the long way to the office. A route that goes by the corner of 31st and Wallace. He doesn't stop. He just drives past slowly, glances at the sidewalk, and keeps going. I still walk Marcus to school every morning. All 6 blocks. And when we reach that corner, I find that my pace has changed without me ever deciding to change it. I don't drop my eyes anymore. If someone is sitting there, I look. I nod. Sometimes I stop. That is what Marcus taught me. I spent years believing my job was to teach my son to be careful in this world. To protect himself, to guard against the unknown. But it turns out my son had a different lesson in mind for me. He taught it without a single word of explanation. With nothing but a wrinkled dollar bill and an open hand. The smallest kindness can end someone's longest night. And sometimes, it is our children who remind us how it's done. Thank you for staying with Ellen's story to the end. If it resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe. And share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time.